There was one story that sort of really stood out to me. It kind of hit me in a really hard way as a parent and someone who has kids. And that was actually an interaction that you had with your dad, Frank Zappa, for anyone who doesn't know. So around age 7, you would become aware of the concept of death. And you were unable to sleep and you were feeling afraid. And so, seeking comfort, you went down to the recording studio to talk to him. Would you mind retelling that story and how he reacted?
Well, first of all, the studio was essentially off limits. We all came to understand that Frank was working, and when he was working, he was not to be disturbed. And so the to dare to go downstairs, it had better be for a good reason. And so, as I say in the book, I bravely went downstairs to tell him I was scared and have some time on his lap. And he spared a few moments, and we talked about. I said, are you scared? And he said, I just don't think about it. This was not a satisfying answer for somebody
Yeah.
with my nervous system. And so I go upstairs, and then I can hear the music coming through the intercom that was in our house, and I would go to sleep listening to his music.
Yeah. So in the book, sort of you describe like his mood is like, how long is this conversation going to take? And you say that you felt that you'd overstayed your welcome and that it was time to leave. What I'm curious about is, had your mother Gail sort of just chipped away though at your self-esteem so much so that by that point you believed that you could never be important enough to deserve his time or his love, or was your dad just sort of incapable of having that empathy or providing you with the comfort that you were seeking, or is it both?
I know that's the journey of the book. The reader gets to decide. Yeah, I mean, this book is it's a to coin a phrase that's being batted around these days. It's a portrait of toxic femininity, growing up as a daughter in a patriarchal home in the context of a larger patriarchal society. The messaging everywhere was just do everything for everybody else, burn yourself out until you are pulverized into dust, and just be of service to everybody and have no needs. And this was certainly, I think, how Gail saw herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I always called it devotion to Frank. What I reflect on now, as something that was dysfunctional at that time, was just how we did things. Frank was my ally. Frank was the love of my life. He was so funny, so smart. When you did have his attention, you felt like you were the most important person in the room, which is why it was contagious intoxication to have that time with him. And he
But always
was.
a short amount of time. I'm just sort of like, I'm sorry for interrupting, but it's like like I'm a parent. Like when my kids have a question and it's like I'm scared of dying. It's like I'm gonna comfort them. I'm gonna sit on their bed, and in the book, it's like you have your little moment. Don't think about it, and then you're like upstairs and you're learning to self-soothe, I guess. But that must have been really lonely.
It really was. It was really difficult. And part of my healing journey was becoming a parent myself,
Yeah,
and getting to have a first childhood by living vicariously through my child, and
yeah.
getting to give what I didn't receive, and something as simple as a hug for comfort, or soup when they're sick, or bedtime tucking in, and until they felt they were done
Yeah.
having in. It's just a totally different mindset. So as a parent, and the crazy thing is my kid has my father's birthday, and then so I had fresh anger and fresh empathy, and fresh awareness,
Yeah.
because also, remember, I understand that they were not raised with that kind of care themselves. My mother came from a military background, and she was the oldest of 7, and she was the caregiver to her siblings.
Yeah.
And this was passed along. And as a kid, you don't know any better, but as you get older, then you really have a sense that this is not it doesn't build, as you say, the esteem, the sense that you have a right to exist. It's a lot to manage.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously Gail's family just now. In the book, you don't really talk much about Frank's parents. Do you know, like, sort of why your dad chose to approach parenting the way he did, or was it just he didn't think about it?
I really don't know, to be honest. I really don't know. But I will say that early on, there was estrangement in the family.
Mhm.
Gail really went out of her way to make sure that Frank's mother was not around. And there was an incident. My grandmother on my father's side, she had, I guess, brought a camera visiting and giving us toys, and I guess had snapped a photo of Gail, and Gail the flash blinded her eyes, and she felt that, and I guess her version was that my grandmother laughed, and so she was banished from the house, never to come to the
Wow.
house again. And so again, I there was estrangement, but I never thought it would ever happen to me. As I write in the book, we were foxes in a little den, and the outside
Yeah.
world was scary, and we all looked out for each other. And so and that's just how I was raised and how I understood the world. And Gail's position was that both of them did everything for the kids. And so I had to reconcile, if this is for me, but I don't like it, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
I look back now and I do wonder if there was some neurodivergence there in my father's mind. If he was, I do wonder, was it
Yeah.
intentional, or was he just, that's just how he was built? And that
It's
those are the
amazing you
questions
say that. It's amazing because that was a question I had, and I had taken it out, which was, am I projecting that in reading the book? But you feel that way
I
having
did. I
lived through me.
always felt like I wasn't in good hands opposite a person, but
Yeah.
as a musician, I was like, the whole world's in the most amazing hands. But because he had this hyper focus in all these amazing areas, but so much was cut away, and I could never
Mhm.
tell if it was because he was, again, selfish, or if it was because he just couldn't see beyond the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I was thinking about in writing the book, I missed out on some stuff with my kid. And so I was regretting writing this book that was
Hmm.
making me cry, and then missing out on time with my kid in the last years of high school. And I thought, well, my father was able to justify the missing time because he had this greater purpose.
Yeah.
And Gail could justify, I imagine, her behavior because she was making sure my father's work got out there. And I'm kind of like missing the I, me, mine, get my work out there gene. I was struggling with that, but maybe they were struggling too. Maybe they just
Hmm.
didn't express it. Maybe my because I always wondered why he kept coming back, why he
Yeah.
kept coming back
Yeah.
to this marriage
Yeah.
that to
Why?
me.
Why do you think that they didn't divorce?
I mean, I really think it's because for Frank, I think it was he had a studio there, and everything that he had that were his tools for working.
Hmm.
He didn't just come home to the family. He came home to his first love,
Yeah.
that studio where he can make his music.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure it was a combination. But again, that ability um to live with your choices, that's something I still think about.
Whew, heavy stuff.
Heavy
Heavy
stuff, but
stuff.
hopefully said in a humorous and focused and fun way.